My game of the day from round 5 of the Sinquefield Cup is Magnus Carlsen against Wesley So. It's quite a long game, but I'm going to breeze through the opening moves. The opening interests me quite a lot in this case because it's a Najdorf variation of the Sicilian, so Wesley So playing with black. And very interesting to see Carlsen taking on the Najdorf, and not only that, playing one of the main lines, this bishop e3 variation, which over the last 10-20 years is really, well, high fashion. You could say the main line is bishop e7, and then in this position to play, well, a5 is my speciality. It's the move I recommend on my DVD, and I've always enjoyed playing that. But actually, the absolute main line, you could say, is this. And well, black has pretty decent results with this line as well, but it's highly theoretical. Wesley So goes another way. He plays knight d7 first. And this is also, well, has been discussed quite a lot in the past, this exact position. So it's a very slight change in move order. Black obviously hasn't castled yet and gets his play going quicker on the queen side, but there are drawbacks to this continuation. This has all been seen before, I should say, very theoretical. And now you can see that already this pawn on b4 is under fire. If this is defended with the a pawn, then bishop b5 comes. Positionally, this is dreadful, of course. That bishop can lock itself in on c6. So it's very important that black plays in another way with knight b6. So black wants to trade the b pawn for the d pawn, and if the bishop is traded on, if the bishop trades for the knight on b6, then positionally this is very pleasant for black. All those dark squares are very inviting, and there's a very easy attacking continuation just to advance the a pawn attack on the queen side. Of course, that was not Magnus's intention. He played knight a5 after a fair think, but I would say that if he's gone in for this line, he would have prepared this very thoroughly, as we're about to see. So he spent just over 15 minutes on this move. I guess he was just checking his preparation. I mean, it's fascinating to see, actually, Carlsen playing a main line, you know, entering into a very theoretical discussion. He doesn't often do that. If you think, often he plays c4 or knight f3 and, you know, plays interesting, quirky systems with white. But this is main line stuff, so he's been doing his homework. Now here, knight f takes d5 has been seen before, but this is favourable for white. This is well known. Wesley plays instead knight b takes d5, and here, well, the old move was knight c6, but black has done okay in this line. For example, there was a game between Svidler and Vachier-Lagrave where, well, Vachier-Lagrave won a really nice game here, just putting the rooks across to the queen side and attacking on the open files. But instead, after not much reflection, Carlsen played knight c4. So this takes the game in a very different route. It's actually highly positional. And this was played in a game, well, it's played in a few games, but notably by the Cuban player Dominguez, who is actually a Najdorf expert with black. So if Dominguez is playing this with white, then I think we can already tell that this is perhaps worth looking at. So he's obviously done his homework, and I suspect Carlsen locked onto this. So, well, for example, Dominguez played this with white against decent player Predojovic. Predojevic, and that game went like this. And Predojevic gave back a pawn straight away just to simplify the position. And here, okay, it's opposite coloured bishops, gives drawing chances, but white is certainly better, and Dominguez managed to win that game. Instead, Wesley So took on e3. So black is a clear pawn up, but white has excellent positional compensation. Now previously a couple of games had been played with h4 and white had just gone straight ahead with a pawn storm on the king side. Carlsen played in a different way, bishop c4, and well, this move looks pretty good because not only does the bishop control this crucial central square d5, but also it assists with protecting on the queen side. So, I mean, it's a typical Carlsen move. He likes control in the position, so he's making sure that he sits on black's central pawns. Now he goes for the pawn advance on the king side. Now if this is taken, this would be disastrous, so mate is coming on the h file, and if g5, well, this is a nightmare position for black. I mean, look at those white squares, dreadful. So Wesley plays a5. Now if he can advance those pawns on the queen side and perhaps open a file, weaken some squares, that would be nice, but not so easy. g5, very nice, locking out black's bishop. Wesley looks to get some counterplay on the c file, but okay, Magnus just locks down the centre, very nice. And here's a very prudent move, typical Carlsen, just making sure everything is right before he launches forward again. So king b1, nice and safe, just stepping out of the c file. And here, you know, there's a very tempting plan for white. The old stuff, you know, the automatic stuff is to play the rook to the g file and then advance h and g pawns. But I think Magnus gets it right, because in this position, then suddenly with that rook away from the d file, black can drive that knight away and things aren't so clear. Well, in fact, of course, white should bring the rook back to d1, but then, you know, black can gain some play on the c file. So the automatic move, rook g1, not so good. Instead, Carlsen played rook f1 with the idea, well, let's see what happens if black plays with his queenside attack. Black would like to advance the a pawn to play a3 and weaken the c3 square. But actually, it's just too slow. In this position, you know, white's kingside attack and just positional control is too much with that pawn on f6. Therefore, Wesley plays knight takes d5. So we've got a classic good knight against bad bishop position. White still a pawn down, but fantastic compensation. In fact, this position reminds me very much of a game that Bobby Fischer played in, you'll find the game in his 60 memorable games. That's the reason it came into my head. Fischer against Bol Bokhan. It's from Stockholm 1962. I know this book backwards. You'll find it in Fischer's 60 memorable games. Very similar game. Fischer wasn't a pawn down though, but very similar pawn structure and piece configuration. Well, Carlsen would like to play f5 and f6, so therefore Wesley blocks with f5. Now you could take en passant, but that would free this bishop. Instead, Carlsen plays very positionally. You could also play h5 here, but it's very interesting to see how Carlsen plays this. First of all, he clarifies the situation in the centre, attacking e5, and that forces e4. So now that the central pawn position is locked, is fixed, then that gives Carlsen greater freedom to pursue his own strategic ends and to manoeuvre without any complication. So Carlsen gets his pawn to h6. This is fantastic. Of course, Wesley has to keep the position closed. And now, well, you can see that Black's king has been opened. If White manages to break through, then the attack on the king will be fatal. There's no pawn cover for Black's king now. And the way that Carlsen manoeuvres is wonderful. So Queen b3. Rook blocks that open diagonal. I mean, that just shows how Black would really like to put his pawns back to cover the king. a4, another classic Carlsen move actually. Before he makes any further progress, he makes sure that his own king is safe. Just compare the two king positions. White's king completely safe. And now it's time to go for a breakthrough. So the obvious continuation is to double on the d file. It's fascinating. If you look at this position using a computer, you'll say the computer will show that, well, it's not too impressed. It thinks the position's roughly level. Well, in practice, I would say this should be winning for White. This is impossible to defend. Look at the harmony that White's pieces have here. Beautiful. Whereas Black's position is split and, yeah, as I said, the king open. So, time for the breakthrough. Carlsen targets that pawn on d6. And here, for example, if that pawn is defended, then whoop, queen e6, and White is starting to break through. Wesley played bishop b6, and now there's a little bit of a trade of pieces. Knight c4, so hitting d6. Of course, that rook gets taken, but the a pawn drops. So we've got a little trade of pieces. If queen takes, then of course just rook takes, and shouldn't take too long for White to break through there. The b pawn will be on prise. So bishop c5. Now queen in. So the material is now level, but well, if Black sits there, then it's going to be hopeless. So Wesley pushes the e pawn, but now Carlsen makes the final breakthrough. Knight d8, pushing the rook out of the way and getting through to Black's king. Now in this position, Carlsen had, from memory, I think he had something like 3 or 4 minutes remaining on his clock to make one more move, and really he needed 20 minutes or so in this position, and then I think he would have won very quickly with knight takes. Well, the main continuation is this. So he snatches the h pawn, but just for a moment his queen is offside, and I think that's what probably put him off. And here, well, this should be winning pretty easily with the queen coming back, but I can understand, why Carlsen didn't go for this, because suddenly there are tricks in this position. For example, here, that's absolutely not clear. But as I said, queen g8 should be a winning move for White. So I can understand with just a few minutes left, he wasn't sure of the details. Instead, Carlsen played knight d4. This is also good, perhaps, well, Carlsen just thought this was an easier way to play. He could be more sure of this line. So with checks, the queen has come round. It looks worrying for White on the a file. In fact, he's quite safe. Not knight b3. This would allow a checkmate, but instead c3. So it just gives his king a little room on c2, and also that queen is able to come back on this diagonal to b3, and actually everything, whoops, I misfired, coming back to b3, and everything is safe. So this was actually very nice technique from Carlsen. You could argue he could have done this quicker. The engines like queen takes c3 in this position, but Carlsen likes clarity. He exchanged off queens, and with that protected pass pawn on h6 Of course, this must be winning, and in practical play, much easier than with the queens on the board. Typical Carlsen, he likes clarity. So this is how the game ended. Carlsen wrapped it up with immaculate technique. The king comes over to stop the e-pawn, and now it's just a case of bringing white's rook round to take that g-pawn. It's actually nothing that black can do in this position. White, in the long run, is going to be winning. So now there's a threat to play h7 and h8, so the rook has to come behind. Now this is a very nice move. Black can still cause some trouble by manoeuvring his king into the position, and oops, that could be fatal if the king comes here, but c4, that ends the game. No more counterplay, and then the rook just comes in, and in this position Wesley resigned. If the king comes back, then we give a check and we take on g6. Two connected pass pawns, it's completely winning for white. Well, this was a brilliant strategic game from Carlsen. I mean, really playing at his absolute best, and just the kind of position that he loves. So after 5 rounds, we have new leaders in the tournament. Well, Aronian is still there. He drew today. He drew against Grishuk, and Carlsen joins him. So Carlsen and Aronian in the lead together. Topalov lost to Caruana, so he slips back a little bit. After 5 rounds, the players have a rest day, so the next game will be on Saturday. Thanks for watching.